Wouldn't you know it, there's always more to say. And there's no one to listen. There's always someone to speak. But, here we go again. So, let's have a talk about this one. We'll talk about the mask. Do you know what a mask is? A mask is something that you put on your face. Okay? So, take for example this bit of paper. What's it really? They have writing on it of some kind, obviously. Otherwise it wouldn't be hanging around on the table, but what is it? Oh, last week's shopping list. Not particularly exciting. The mask. We got a little bit of string and we put it like this, wrapped it on the face. Would that be a COVID-19 mask? Be a COVID-19 mask, maybe? It's a COVID-19 mask. Should we set it on fire? No, not in here, anyway. Okay, so there's an old drama type idea about the mask. The mask is something that the bourgeois used to wear at their fancy parties. Back in the days of Marie Antoinette, you know, the one that reckons you can eat cake when you've got no bread. You know that one? You know that old story? Well, anyway, back in those days when they were proudly proclaiming that, and by the way, that's actually a misquote. She didn't say that exactly, but it was similar enough to be made fun of. And of course, due to what they were doing at the time, allegedly, or actually, making fun of it really doesn't seem like it's that much harm, except whether or not it's historically accurate. But what is historically accurate is that those bourgeois characters from the French aristocracy and other aristocracies, as well as generic upper middle class people from the merchant class and whatever else, they like to have fancy parties, you know, the ones in the movies, with mates up, with the weird wigs they used to wear because they got nits all the time. Well, when they were wearing those wigs because they had nits, and they were wearing a fancy new outfit because the previous one had to be cut off with a pair of pliers and scissors because they had so much dirt underneath them because they only bathed once a year. When they had a fancy outfit, they had a party. And when they had a party, they wore a mask. Now, one of the reasons why they wore a mask is because they were covering pox. They had this condition called pox where they had these sores all over their faces and their teeth were rotting out of their heads, and they were not particularly attractive people. The bourgeois of old looked nothing like the celebrities of today. Other than the celebrities of today, in some cases, applying bacteria to their face in the form of Botox and then having the skin scraped off and replaced with, of all things, a paste made from Korean baby dicks. Foreskins. So they're literally dickheads. There isn't much of a resemblance. The other resemblance was as they had live music and all the who's who of their particular social class and the fanciest food they can find. And the reason why they wore the masks, other than to cover for their ridiculous ugliness and general ill health, was because it was a disinhibitor. And so they were, in some cases, allegedly very much conditioned to a very strict form of social etiquette where social expression was quite limited and certain expectations were put upon them where they were not able to engage in free expression. So basically the idea of the mask was to, grab people by the pussy but have it not knowing that was, so-and-so. And the worst part about it, of course, is that the person's ass that they were grabbing was also wearing a mask. And they might have, grabbed their own mother's butt. And so it was the case that the aristocracy was in a state of social awkwardness. The mask was useful though, because at those parties they let off steam. They were disinhibited, you see. All that tension from being stuck up for so long was let go of. And it's a really strange thing that there's been periods of strict inhibition and strict disinhibition in many societies, usually imperial ones, but definitely Anglophone ones, going back for some time now. Some people harken back to the 1960s, with the hippies as being a sort of means by which disinhibition occurred. And then it became very risque in the 70s. And then by the 1980s, they decided to become really corporate and get serious and get a job. And Wall Street took over. And then in the 90s, they sort of tried to be more moderate about it and want to talk about their feelings but not be too awful about it. They were in a lot of pain, it was all very grungy. In the early 2000s, 2000 to about 2010, well, it was starting to become more disinhibited again. Popular music became, with the R&B and the rap music in particular, but not exclusively, but pop music more generally, had gone from being something roughly akin to class-based versions of expressing disaffection and discrimination, mixed with the ood-dop, ba-doo-ba-da-wop-wop love songs of the 60s and 50s. And then by the early 2000s, it became more disinhibited. You started to see more popular music with people, wearing less clothing, or more revealing clothing, or talking about more risque subjects without a mask. And as that happened, the advent of the internet was well underway and became very much accessible to people, and eventually by 2010 via mobile phone technology. And by that point, we were 4 years into the Facebook era, and the Twitter era was just beginning, and we were well and truly, in at least 7 years into the 4chan era, which begins in the early 2000s. So, suffice to say, before Facebook and Twitter was invented, Anonymous was invented. Some people believe, with good reason as it turns out, that Telnet and Usenet of the early 90s to mid 1990s, message board systems, were the place where Anonymous began, because people didn't have solid usernames, handles, or whatever. Sometimes they did. For example, Julian Assange's handle before he got arrested at the age of 17 was Mendax. Anyway, over the course of time, that idea of Anonymous became popular. As you might imagine, a lot of pent-up people in a increasingly overpopulated world, maybe not overpopulated, that's probably not the correct word for it. It actually depends on where you live. There are some places that kind of have a shortage of people, actually. It's kind of a bit remote or even lonely. Well, as it turns out, as it turns out, there was a propensity for people who lived in urban environments in particular to, well, they were a bit lonely in their apartments, their unit blocks, weren't they? And they had no one to talk to. They even referred to themselves as the basement dwelling cheezel eaters, sometimes living at their mother's house. It became a trope and a stereotype. The anonymity or the mask of the internet became, for some people, a way of life. And so, Before there was even Facebook or Twitter to troll people with, the internet troll was born. Not as a meme, not as a character, not as an individual, not as a group, but as a morass of people have found a means to express themselves without even showing themselves at all. And therefore, as it turns out, there were trolls on the internet grabbing their own mother's bottoms with memes without even realising it. Oh, the cringe, you might say, in this day and age. On the subject of Jim Carrey's movie The Mask, the green mask called Loki, that was from the early 90s. If you're not old enough to know what that is, look it up. It's definitely cringeworthy, just like pretty much everything Jim Carrey's ever done. But it's an interesting thing because, in the sense of when you're talking about the attempt to enculture us over the last 40 or 50 years, subtly directing us in the direction of getting people to try and accept this idea that the world is a simulation, that it's run by aliens from outer space. There is a hierarchy associated with it. The hierarchy of aliens as some kind of galactic federation. The anonymity of the internet meant that people could post tribe like that, and people wouldn't necessarily be able to fact check as well. It also meant that people could hack, which means they could hack into military computers, Air Force and the like. And some of the people that claim to do that claim to have dossiers or documents about various and sundry exploits that these groups were doing. And sometimes it was true, and sometimes it was not. And sometimes, the military and acronym agency groups took advantage of it and posed as the anonymous people, posed as the 4chans, posed as the Facebook users, posed as the tweeters, and released information that was a straight up fucking lie. Or, in some cases, were genuine whistleblowers. But because of the inability to experience things directly with our very own eyes, it became impossible to be able to discern which one was which. And over the long course of time, you eventually get the strangest meme of all: fake news. Amazingly, that is a catchphrase of Donald Trump, the man we love to hate these days. He's the one that coined the phrase fake news. Now with Donald Trump, he turns around and he only says it's fake news when it doesn't benefit him. When it's, he's getting busted for something he's done, like 34 counts of fraud, for example. But that being said, the capability of fake news is extraordinary. There are YouTube accounts that have been witnessed that admit that every single one of their AI videos are, of course, that artificial intelligence. And some of those people appear to be ordinary, people with mobile phones or whatever, using their credit. And they just use some app or something like that to make the AI video, and they're just producing this bizarre stuff. And sometimes it's so realistic, it looks like the actual people and even sounds like them. It's almost believable. And given some of the stories that get told about some of these characters, Trump and Musk are favourites these days for that type of stuff. It's sometimes believable in the content as well, despite being obviously ridiculous and parody and satire. And that is something that other people have noticed is concerning. When the mask, when the parody, when the satire becomes indistinguishable from reality, then we are in deep, deep trouble. With comedy and satire and mask wearing, there is meant to be a time and a place for it. It's not meant to be our way of life. When people are themselves, they might make an artwork now and then to make fun of something. Maybe it's you know, something that means something to them, but someone else has a drastically different interpretation of, oh, it's like that. And some people really do like that stuff that people say from the post 2010s is absolute garbage. Now, some people who are older people might go look at Billie Eilish and go, oh, she's just Illuminati crap. But actually, for some of the younger people, she might represent someone who is a bit like Taylor Swift. Someone who is bravely outspoken in the face of misogyny, no less. I mean, after all, Mr. Musk did make misogynistic comments towards her, and she continued proudly and boldly with what she thought was the right thing to do. And it doesn't matter if you agree with that or not. She tried. And at that point, it shouldn't matter whether or not you like her music. That sounds like a character that's respectable, doesn't it? Someone who has values and sticks to them. Someone who means well. What's wrong with that? Not a single thing. And so, um, the sort of maligning, perhaps, of the professional music industry and the movie industry because of its seedier elements, because of the way that pop musicians and comedians and performers have been honestly taken advantage of, and the way that their ideas have been turned into mush in some cases, or at least diluted in such a manner that it becomes difficult for the viewer to discern what they mean or what their true and original intention was, is something that might be offensive to those musicians, to those artists and those performers. It's something that might be offensive to the audience too. Um, they might come to like that person. Maybe that's what a fan is. Someone who goes, you know what, that person seems all right. It's not just their art that's cool. Or maybe their art's not that very cool at all. Maybe they're cool. And maybe what's cool for one person isn't cool for another. And so the habit of the older people to poo-poo what the younger people like, when typically it's the younger people who can see through their shit. It's the younger people who grew up on a steady diet of Facebook and Twitter, who grew up on a steady diet of Instagram and memes, who know exactly how those platforms work, who know what the lingo is, who know more about memes than LOL cats, who know when somebody is doing an outdated, cringe-worthy thing like Dogie. Those people already grew up knowing that Martin Luther King was a good person and that recycling was in people's best interests. They couldn't understand why there ever was a world where you had black people and white people walking on different sides of the street, why women were property ones. They can't understand how that world was even possible. They're even confused by ideas that was even possible because they have parents and grandparents who are nice people most of the time, even when they're grumpy with them and won't let them, you know, go on Facebook at 2 o'clock in the morning or tell them that they have to study harder or whatever nagging parent shit they do. They know that their parents don't believe in slavery and their parents don't believe in racism or discrimination either. They just grew up in a different world and the language was different back then, and heck, they didn't use that filthy crap anyway. They don't understand how the world was like that. Weren't some of those people in it? Oh wait, if you look at the dates, they might have been too young for that too. It might have been the great grandparents or the great great grandparents. Whatever the case might be, the younger generation of people does not comprehend what the older generation are doing. And what the older generation of people are doing is not making any sense at all. We have too many conflicting worldviews at the moment, and each and every one of them is a mask. A mask that's trying to explain how the world works and try and control how the world works and try and control the people in the world and how the world works. And none of them allowing people to live in it. It's just pissing contests, usually by men. But then, of course, gender equality means women have to be just like men, don't they? And engage in pissing contests all fucking day. Well, what if they want to? And what if they don't? What if men don't want to engage in pissing contests? Oh, you're the better man, are you? Because you manipulate the other fucking men to get to the women. Oh, that makes you a strong and powerful man, doesn't it? Well, how old school are you? Don't you know what century you're in? There's people from the 1970s who decided to plant the seed of the idea that there's an alien hierarchy and aliens at the top of the hierarchy, something like that, are crazy people. On the other hand, there are some very strange anomalies going on, and if you've been paying attention, you'll have noticed them. Perhaps COVID-19, have you noticed how COVID-19, they thought they might try to make out like was yet another end of the world event, and sure enough, with its masks and its hand washing and its swabs and its vaccines and yes, people dying, it wasn't anywhere near as bad as they made it out to be. It never is though, is it? With their apocalyptic talk, it never bloody is. Have you noticed that if you actually look at the statistics, we've got a very strange conflict going on here where the Chinese are trying to claim that they've lost 1 in 20 of their young people and that they have 400 million people now instead of 1.5 billion. And yet the COVID-19 statistics are actually suggesting that the most deaths occurred in the United States of America. And moreover, that it was less than 2%. So a less than 2% death rate for a global pandemic of that sort is actually, despite its devastating consequences, not that bad. Not that bad. Nowhere near as bad as the Spanish flu was in 1919. Not that bad. It's actually improved somehow. Maybe access to hygiene, like hand washing and masks help you. It might have actually helped, but you never know. And on that subject, masks aren't really that bad, are they? When it's temporary and it's used for a purpose and the community understands why you're doing it. When Muslim ladies wear their masks, their community understands why they're doing it. They understand why they're doing it. The only reason why other people have a problem with it is because they don't understand why they're doing it. But why should it be their business? It's not like they're going to cough on you. There's something in the way. Why should they have to wear a mask? Well, so men don't look at them. Or maybe the men should be taught not to look at them. It's not to say that one argument is more valid than the other. They're all valid arguments. You know what's not a valid argument, though? Telling her what she can and can't wear. That's not a valid argument. It's not a valid argument to say that a person can't be a transvestite, that you're not going to acknowledge a person's transvestism. Isn't that what Donald Trump tried to do? He tried to say if a man wants to wear a dress, he's not allowed to. Well, isn't he a bit silly? Is a transvestite the same thing as a transgender person? Well, obviously it's not. Okay, that's a bit more complicated. However, it seems very silly, doesn't it? What if the transvestite's using the dress as a mask? What if he's doing vaudeville? What if he's a drag queen? What are you going to get against drag queens? Nothing? Are they don't, they have a good way of trying to present. This is the myth that they're talking about, isn't it? The myth of infinite progress. And it's always in one direction. And they're controlling it too. And they shouldn't be. Progress is supposed to be in one direction, is it? So you're supposed to have this infinite progression towards a neoliberal corporate crypto-fascist oligarchy where everyone turns into alien cyborgs that serves the Galactic Federation, do you? No? How is that progress? It isn't necessarily progress to believe that you're merely a cog in a machine or that you never had a human identity and you're really an alien from outer space. Those things are not progress. Those things might even be considered a form of slavery, especially when it's not consented to. They say each their own. But then, if you don't agree with them, you could get into trouble. Do you have to put on a troll mask on the internet, do you? Do you have to become anonymous? Do you have to become elite hacker of the 21st century? Just to navigate anything at all? Just to be aware of how subgrids work? Just to know exactly how to tunnel information between telephones and hack people's machines? Do you have to know how that works just to be able to go to the bank or the post office? What do you have to do to have privacy in this world when they don't even want you to have privacy in your own head? Are we at the era where they're literally able to beam advertisements into our brains? Are we already there? Do they see our bodies as merely masks for whatever energetic fields they feel like shoving there at the time, or technology, or whatever else? Are we really there? Why should any of us be subjected to the opinions of what people think we should be going through, or what we are going through, or their manipulations of us? Why should anyone do that? And if anyone should do that to you, even to liberate you, know that they are enslaved by something. They haven't got a liberation ideology. You've got theology, you haven't got a liberation ideology. If you're subjected to fascism, you might be stuck doing fascism, and you'll hate every minute of it. Don't be surprised, please, at just how nasty that shit can get. The community's fear on this subject is valid. It's, however, not permanent. And it stops. It stops. You know when it stops? When men give up controlling other people. When they just fucking stop. When they just go away and they stop. You know what's going to end this fascism more than anything else? The 4B movement. The 4B movement is going to fix this more than anything else. 4B movement is going to fix this. Okay? Men should not make camps anywhere near women, spiritually, physically, or otherwise. This has got to stop. This has got to stop. If people want to be transgendered, that has to be voluntary. It cannot be involuntary. And they certainly cannot be forced to see otherwise. And it must happen as an adult. And that argument is different from intersex persons who often have had surgery forced upon them in their infancy only for it to be the wrong surgery and for it to be corrected as an adult. These topics are complicated. These spiritual and technological topics are complicated. These political topics are complicated. These social topics are complicated. But if you need a simple answer, it's the 4B movement. It's time for the men to get away from women, permanently and forever. It's time for them to lose any sense of entitlement whatsoever. Have no sense of entitlement. None whatsoever, no matter how rich or poor you are. Lose your entitlement in general. You don't protect people. It's not your job. The job of the men is not to protect people. The job of the men is to leave people alone. And it doesn't matter which bloke it is. It does not matter where they are. They are to leave people alone. Every last one of them is wrong. Some of them mean well. But the ones that actually do well are the ones that don't touch.